At a time of major political transformation, Georgia is going to the polls in one of the most crucially important elections in a generation. Euronews has already sat down with President Salom Zurabishvili, and I'm in Tbilisi for an in-depth interview with Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze. Prime Minister, thank you so much for joining us on Euronews. It's a pleasure to be here. I know this is an extremely busy week for you. This is also a crucial time for Georgia as the country is heading into elections which are seen as a decision maker for the future of Georgia. For you as a young Prime Minister, what do you see as the future of Georgia?
First of all, thank you very much for this interview. It's a pleasure for me to be interviewed by Euronews. Thank you for your interest. We are anticipating really crucial elections for Georgia. We enjoy quite a rapid development in our country. We enjoy a rapid economic development. The country is developing. But the challenges are quite essential for Georgia. We are saying very directly and very explicitly that these elections is also a referendum about the war and the peace issue. Yeah. Georgian Dream government, we believe, is the strongest guarantee for the peace in this country, but it's also about the development of the country. We have again the rapid economic development, and we want to keep this trend for Georgia. During the last 3 years and a half, we enjoyed almost double-digit economic growth, and we had the highest growth not only in the region but also in Europe. The average economic growth in Georgia used to be 9.7% in 2021, 2022 and 2023, and also this year's preliminary figure is 10% economic growth. So for us, keeping this trend is very important, also with regard to the European integration of Georgia, because we know that without proper economic figures, Georgia will never be accepted as a member, full-fledged member of the European Union.
What is the level of dialogue then with the EU in terms of your EU membership, and what is the next stage of that for Georgia?
Unfortunately, we are facing some challenges in terms of the dialogue at this moment. But in general, if we summarize the outcomes of our policies, Georgian Dream's policies, the Georgian Dream government managed to achieve all important steps towards the European integration. We managed to sign, as the Georgian Dream government, the association agreement with the European Union back in 2014. We managed to sign the DCFTA with the European Union. We got the visa-free regime for our citizens, and finally the Georgian Dream's government managed to get the candidate status for Georgia. I strongly believe that as soon as these elections will be over, and as soon as the war in Ukraine will be over, we will essentially improve and restart the relations between Georgia and the EU, and also between Georgia and the US.
As a Georgian, what does Europe mean to you, and what would it mean to be part of that club that is seen as the European Union?
To be part of the European family is a kind of historic choice for Georgia and for Georgians. You know that we are a Christian nation, and Europe was always associated with Christianity and with defending and protecting Christianity for Georgia. So that's why Europe was always a kind of natural choice for Georgia and for Georgians, and that is one of the strongest reason why we want to be the full-fledged member of the European family. Europe also means the higher level of prosperity, means development for Georgians. So that's why it's our very strong aspiration to move towards Europe. So that's why we are very much committed to this foreign policy priority of Georgia.
The world has been debating the question in the East and both the West, and especially in your country, as you say, are you pro-Russian or anti-European? Can you put it to rest once and for all for us?
We are clearly pro-European as a government, and we have evidenced it by our actions. And again, so there are very specific actions through which we managed to move the country towards the EU. That's why there is no space for this kind of manipulations.
Yeah.
But the opposition is there to manipulate. That's their choice. That's their job. That's part of democracy. We will continue to make everything to promote Georgia's EU accession also in the future.
As well as talking obviously to the EU, which you are clearly doing, you speak to governments all around the world. When was the last time you spoke to the Kremlin?
We have even no diplomatic relations with Russia. Maybe Georgia is the only country in the region which has no diplomatic relations with Russia. And we have communication with our Western partners in Europe and in the US. So that's the current state of affairs. That's why there is also in this case no space for any manipulations.
Well, this week again we've seen elections in other countries, and in particular Moldova. There was a lot of controversy in terms of Russia's involvement in the political process there. Will we see anything like that come here to Georgia?
You can say that Russia is not influential in Georgia. There are no political parties where they would enjoy their influence. There is no influential media channels with their influence. So that's why the Russian side cannot influence the elections in Georgia, essentially.
Looking in, it seems that you're matching certain Kremlin narratives in terms of some of the policies and laws that are being introduced here. The foreign agents law, LGBTQ. Is that something that you would say is following in their footsteps?
These are the decisions made by the Georgian government, and these decisions have nothing to do with the decisions made by the Russian government. We have introduced the transparency law, and the content of this law has nothing to do with the content of the Russian law about the NGOs. This law is only about the transparency. The only thing which is envisaged by this law is to ensure that the NGOs are publicizing their annual financial declarations to the Ministry of Justice. And that's it. There are no restrictions. That's why this message about the Russian law was also a complete fake. The law about the LGBTI, that's also our national decision.
When it comes to war in Ukraine, there seems to have been a shift in tone on that. Is Georgia seeing this as an opportunity to have its independent voice heard? And if there is an opportunity there, what is it for you?
Well, in general, we are strongly supporting Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And we have condemned the Russian military aggression many times. We have joined more than 600 international acts in support of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, and condemning also the Russian military aggression. So that's why we can say very firmly that our position with regard to the ongoing war in Ukraine is very strong. And of course, this position is based on international law standards.
Any war brings with it horrors that we see happening in Ukraine, and Georgia lost territories throughout history. How did that shape you as a person and a politician in terms of your policies, throughout your career?
So we had a very complicated history, especially during the last 30 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But we also learned a lot. And this experience is something which helped us to avoid many problems during the last decade. And for me, also as a politician, this experience is very useful and very important. And again, so the entire team used this experience for managing the issues and for avoiding the war in Georgia.
What does that mean for a country like Georgia that is surrounded by war?
It puts us into a very complicated situation, of course. But again, despite all these challenges, we managed to keep peace in the country.
How do you react to Western sanctions against Russia, and what impact does that have on the region?
I remember that the opposition was very much pushing us to join these sanctions, but we made a different decision, and I can explain it very easily. The share of the Georgian trade in the entire Russian trade is 0.3%. Of course, Georgia can not damage the Russian economy by introducing the economic sanctions. At the same time, introducing sanctions would mean escalation of the conflict. So that's why we had a very strong ground for not following this opposition's demand. But again, so we are doing our best not to let anybody to use the Georgian territory for avoiding the sanctions.
Let's talk trade and energy security, which is very important for this area. You know, where does Georgia play into that? And the strategic location is crucial for Georgia, isn't it?
Strengthening the connectivity function for Georgia is one of the key tasks for us, and especially under the new geopolitical circumstances, we can really essentially strengthen our connectivity function in this region. For example, we have a very important strategic projects which connects us with Azerbaijan and Turkey, and there are some other important projects envisaged. For example, the Black Sea underwater electricity cable project and the internet cable project, which will connect Georgia with the European markets. And we are also investing a lot into the development of the infrastructure. We managed to build around 300 kilometers of highways in Georgia. Now we have already launched constructing a new port on the Black Sea. We are launching to construct a new Tbilisi International Airport. We are expanding the capacities of the Kutaisi International Airport, etc., railway. There are many different projects which are also part of our program, and we are fully concentrated on this agenda for this country.
Prime Minister, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.